Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we're diving into a topic that sits at the volatile intersection of technology, economics, and immigration, the H-1B visa. Is it a golden ticket for the world's brightest minds to fuel American innovation? Or is it a backdoor for corporations to suppress wages and displace local workers? This single program has become a battleground for two competing visions of the American economy. Let's unpack the complex and often controversial world of the H-1B visa. The program as we know it today was created by the Immigration Act of 1990. Its purpose is clear: to allow U.S. companies to temporarily hire foreign workers in what are called specialty occupations. Think fields like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The STEM fields, where at least a bachelor's degree is the standard entry ticket. The process sounds straightforward on paper. An employer files a labor condition application with the Department of Labor. In it, they promise that hiring a foreign worker won't hurt the wages or working conditions of American employees. They also have to pay the H-1B worker either the same wage as their other employees in that role or the prevailing wage for that job in that specific city, whichever is higher. But here's the catch. Demand for these visas consistently blows past the supply. Congress has capped the number at 65,000 per year, with an extra 20,000 reserved for those with a U.S. master's degree or higher. This scarcity has turned the application process into a high-stakes lottery. For fiscal year 2025, for instance, the cap was hit on December 2, 2024. Once granted, a visa lasts for 3 years, can be extended to 6, and during that time, the employer can sponsor the worker for a green card, a path to permanent residency. This program isn't static. It has been tweaked and debated for decades. In 1998, a law temporarily raised the visa quota. More recently, a highly controversial proposal emerged in 2025, a staggering $100,000 fee for every new H-1B application. A move intended to shake the very foundations of how the program is used. So what's the argument for this program? Proponents see it as a powerful engine for innovation. The logic is a virtuous cycle. Bring in the best global talent, and they will invent new technologies, start new companies, create new jobs, and supercharge the entire U.S. economy. The evidence backing this view is surprisingly robust. Let's talk about patents. A significant body of research links H-1B workers directly to inventive activity. Studies show that immigrants in the U.S. patent at double the rate of their native-born counterparts, mainly because they are heavily concentrated in STEM fields. One analysis found that a mere 10% increase in H-1B admissions leads to a 3% higher growth in patenting for firms that rely on them. This effect is especially strong with inventors from India and China, who are the biggest recipients of H-1B visas. A 2020 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research and Harvard University is even more specific. It found that the Indian diaspora's share of U.S. patents skyrocketed from less than 2% in 1975 to 10% by 2019, with a huge concentration in the computer industry. Another study looked at the relationship between the number of H-1B holders in a state and the number of patents issued in that state between 2008 and 2019. The correlation was a stunning 0.89, which is almost a perfect one-to-one relationship. The research even showed a time lag, meaning an increase in H-1B workers 1 year directly predicted more patents the next year, especially in computer science and optoelectronics. Beyond patents, there's the powerful narrative of the immigrant entrepreneur. The story of someone arriving on an H-1B visa and building a billion-dollar company is a cornerstone of the American dream. A 2022 report found that immigrants founded or co-founded more than half of America's unicorn startups, private companies valued at over $1 billion. And a 2024 report by Indiaspora and the Boston Consulting Group found that India is the #1 country of origin for these unicorn founders in the last 5 years. These 72 immigrant-founded companies have a combined value of over $195 billion and have created more than 55,000 jobs. The names are often familiar: Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX, Sundar Pichai of Alphabet, and Satya Nadella of Microsoft all began their professional journeys in the U.S. on skilled worker visas. Jyoti Bansal came to the U.S. on an H-1B, founded the software company AppDynamics, and later sold it for $3.7 billion. These aren't just success stories. They're used as proof that the H-1B program doesn't just fill jobs, it creates entire industries. Finally, supporters argue these workers are a complement to, not a substitute for, the American workforce. They fill critical skills gaps in high-demand fields where the U.S. might not be graduating enough people. By filling these gaps, they allow companies to grow their operations in the U.S. instead of moving them overseas. And of course, these high-skilled, well-paid workers spend their money here, creating even more jobs in their local communities. But that's only one side of the story. For every tale of innovation, there is a counter-narrative of exploitation and wage suppression. This darker perspective paints the H-1B program not as a talent magnet, but as a corporate cost-cutting tool. The central point of attack is that prevailing wage requirement we talked about earlier. Critics, like the Economic Policy Institute, argue the system is fundamentally broken. The Department of Labor sets 4 prevailing wage levels, and a 2020 EPI report found something shocking. 60% of all H-1B positions were certified at the 2 lowest levels. That means 14% were at level 1, which corresponds to the 17th percentile of wages for that occupation. And another 46% were at level 2, the 34th percentile. Both are well below the median wage. This suggests that a majority of employers aren't using the H-1B to attract the world's best and brightest with top-tier salaries, but to hire cheaper, mid-level labor. The Heritage Foundation found similar results, concluding that a huge portion of H-1B workers are paid less than the median, suggesting the program is failing its mission. The role of large IT outsourcing and staffing firms is especially controversial. Companies like Tata, Infosys, and HCL have consistently been among the top recipients of H-1B visas. Their business model often involves hiring thousands of H-1B workers directly and then contracting them out to other major corporations. Critics say this is a loophole. A company like Disney, for example, can lay off its entire in-house IT department and then immediately sign a contract with an outsourcing firm to provide those same services, now performed by lower-paid H-1B workers. This allows them to replace American workers without technically violating the H-1B rule against displacing U.S. workers themselves. A 2021 EPI report detailed a bombshell allegation based on an internal document from HCL Technologies. It claimed widespread wage theft, alleging that thousands of HCL's H-1B workers were underpaid by at least $95 million. The document suggested the company systematically paid its H-1B employees less than their U.S. counterparts. In one example from 2015, an Oracle expert on an H-1B visa was allegedly paid $55,000 less per year than a U.S. worker in the exact same role. This leads directly to the issue of displacement. The White House has made claims that in 2025 alone, over 40,000 American tech workers were laid off and replaced by H-1B visa holders. The most infamous case occurred at Disney in 2014, where U.S. workers were reportedly forced to train their own H-1B replacements as a condition of receiving their severance packages. It's a gut-wrenching scenario. And the exploitation doesn't stop with American workers. The very structure of the H-1B program makes the foreign workers themselves vulnerable. Their legal status is tied directly to their sponsoring employer. If they lose their job, they have a very short window to find a new sponsor or leave the country. This gives employers immense power. Workers may be hesitant to report abuse, low pay, or grueling hours for fear of being fired and deported. There are even anecdotal reports of a toxic culture where managers who came on visas themselves preferentially hire and then exploit other visa holders, knowing they have limited recourse. The U.S. government itself, through the Citizenship and Immigration Services, acknowledges the potential for fraud, noting that employers who misuse the program can drive down wages and opportunities for everyone. With two such dramatically different realities, it's no surprise that the path forward is fiercely debated. Reform proposals are everywhere, each reflecting a different diagnosis of the problem. The most explosive proposal is the $100,000 fee for new H-1B applications. Proponents, including Netflix co-founder Reed Hastings, say this would force companies to use the visa only for exceptionally high-skilled, high-value jobs, as it would no longer be a cheap option. It would effectively kill the lottery system. But critics, especially from startups and smaller businesses, call it a de facto ban. They argue that only giants like Google or Microsoft could afford such a fee, stifling innovation from the smaller companies that often drive it, and pushing them to offshore jobs instead. Another popular reform is to scrap the lottery entirely and replace it with a wage-based selection process. This would prioritize applications with the highest offered salaries, with the theory being that the highest-paid jobs represent the most skilled and in-demand workers. Others focus on simply raising the wage floor. The American Tech Workforce Act, for example, proposed raising the minimum H-1B salary from a paltry $60,000 to $150,000. The logic is simple. If it's more expensive to hire a foreign worker, companies will only do so when there's a genuine need for elite talent, not as a cost-saving measure. Of course, there are also calls for a massive increase in oversight and enforcement, with more random audits of companies that heavily rely on H-1Bs and stricter penalties for those who break the rules. On the flip side, some argue for expansion. They believe the current cap is arbitrary and suffocates economic growth. Some even suggest uncapping the visa entirely for entrepreneurs who want to come to the U.S. to start a company and create jobs. Ultimately, the H-1B debate is about more than just a visa category. It forces us to ask fundamental questions about our national identity. Who do we welcome? What skills do we value? And how do we balance the relentless pursuit of technological dominance with the economic well-being of our own citizens? As technology continues its rapid advance, the demand for high-skilled talent isn't going away. The challenge for policymakers is to craft a system that feeds our innovation engine without sacrificing fairness for the domestic workforce. The future of the H-1B visa, and a significant piece of America's economic future, hangs in that delicate balance.